bottom line, Mubarak would not go along with giving his support to an attack on Iran. The globalists want chaos in the region as a pretext to continue to have forces there and to expand that presence. And this is the stated policies of the Soros crew, of Zbigniew-Brzezinski, of Henry Kissinger. And Webster, I understand you want to see Egypt thrive, you want to see development, but I don't see the globalists allowing that. We know the IMF World Bank policy is to use debt and high interest rates to keep countries in squalor so that they can never properly develop, so they're basically under the control of this soft economic imperium. So shifting gears away from that, who are the different factions there? Who is the Muslim Brotherhood? Give us a brief tutorial on the admitted history of radical Islam being funded, financed, and protected to radicalize the Muslim world as a pretext to produce a clash of civilizations. And where do you see this going? Not where you want to see it go, but where do you see this New World Order operation going?
Well, in Egypt, it's very clear that the Muslim Brotherhood was created by the British in the late 1920s as an antidote to at the time that the country was a British colony. It was an attempted antidote by the British to the WAFD party, W-A-F-D, which had a strong nationalist and anti-British component to it. It was a parliamentary party. So the British created the Muslim Brotherhood as a counterweight. And the Muslim Brotherhood was generally not agitating against the British colonialism, but rather agitating against the local governments on these themes of what we could call social issues. Now, during the 60s, 50s, and 60s into the 70s, the Muslim Brotherhood attempted to sabotage the modernization of Egypt, especially because they were opposed to Nasser. Now, Nasser, of course, had many problems, but he had tremendous merits, and the biggest merit is that huge aswan-dam, which is the centerpiece of the economic development of the whole country in the past half-century. I would say that the Muslim Brotherhood has factions in it that have mellowed during the 80s, 90s, and into the current decade, but the idea of a government where the Muslim Brotherhood would have total power, I think, would be a very bad thing.
But they are calling, let me just stop you, they are calling, now let's go on to Egypt. From Egypt to Saudi Arabia to Jordan to Yemen, sure. They are calling for this, and strangely we see Iran saying they like it. We see the globalists funding it, obviously, to try to get the radicals into power or to use them to further destabilize. Then the globalists can come in and fill that vacuum with other coalition weak puppet governments that they can control. But I want to play this brief clip from Henry Kissinger a few weeks ago saying that this Mubarak situation is only the first scene in the first act of a larger play. Here it is.
There's no possibility that they won't in a democratic process. The question is whether other parties can emerge that balance them.
Dr. Kissinger, before I leave you, what advice would you give Secretary Clinton right now as she's dealing with this?
Well, I would talk as little publicly as possible because we don't really know what is going on. We are generally, I think the conduct of our government has been generally in the right direction for the same goals. We should not have any illusions, however. We are going to go through a period of great uncertainty and of a lot of maneuvering once the lid is off. Right now, everybody's focused on the removal of Mubarak. That is only the first scene of the first act of a drama that has to be played out.
All right.
And this act you see...
So, Webster, what I'm saying here is the global technocrats, the Anglo-American establishment, Britain, the U.S., Israel, they wouldn't be going with this destabilization program if they weren't confident. I'm asking you, what is their stratagem? I mean, we know the general stratagem, but what do you see them doing next?
Well, remember, they talk big, and they always promise more than they can deliver. And maybe it's not that they're confident. Maybe it's that they're desperate, and this is a flight forward on other issues, mainly the dollar. Right now, they have a military junta. These are the generals. These are mainly generals chosen by Mubarak. Let's look at the tradition in Egypt. It's the tradition of the colonels. In the 1950s, you had the overthrow of King Farouk, who had been backed by the British. And then you had a kind of a transitional situation, which may be where we are now, and then the coup d'etat of the colonels around Nasser, which gave you about the best government in the Middle East that you had during this entire period of several decades. So let's look maybe somewhere in the Egyptian army. There are some radicalized colonels who see the humiliation of their country, a coup d'etat proclaimed by the head of the CIA from Washington. They must be mortified beyond belief. So maybe there's a counter force emerging there. I think that's a real worry for the Anglo-Americans, that you might have some modernizing, pro-development, non-Mubarak, non-dictatorial, but authoritarian types in the Egyptian military. Perfectly possible. Other than that, the soft power group, the people who believe in subversion, not bombing, but using these methods of the people power coup, the color revolution, the postmodern coup, they would undoubtedly set their sights on Syria. What are the chances in Syria? Well, on the one side, Syria is a very highly developed police state, maybe more so than Egypt. I think a lot more so than Egypt. On the other hand, it has an ethnic minority ruler. The Assad family represent this very small Alawite ethnic minority, which is ethnically different from the vast majority of the Syrian population. So they're a target. They'll undoubtedly target Jordan. Now there it's significantly harder because of the way in which the monarchy is rooted in the clan and even tribal structure of the country. So far, there's no movement against the Hashemite dynasty represented by the current king. And then we get to Saudi Arabia. Let's see what might happen here. We had this idea that Prince Bandar, about 18 months ago, was attempting to play the Russian card. And there was a crackdown on him. And the last I heard of him, he was put under house arrest. If you can imagine King Abdullah and maybe more active people in the royal family, they look at the fate of Mubarak. What are they going to do? They're going to say, call Beijing, call Moscow, call people in, let's play these other cards. The U.S. may be, therefore, impelled to try a coup in Saudi Arabia to prevent Saudi Arabia from developing fallback options that would allow them to escape from this situation of one-way dependency on the U.S. Then you can look at some other countries. Algeria, you've got Bouteflika there. He's been there for quite a while. They'd like to target him. It's a very big oil producer. And, of course, the net idea, all of these countries use them against Russia, use them against China, use them against Iran. That's the bottom line. And whereas Mubarak said, I'm not interested in that, that doesn't help me, get lost, scram, beat it. Now you're going to have governments that will say, oh, yes, of course, Mr. Obama, we'll be so happy to carry out your anti-Chinese, anti-Iranian, anti-Russian policies. And I'm afraid that's what has changed. If Obama wants to go and do something for Egypt in his speech at 1:30, instead of more of this hot air, blasé rhetoric that he usually comes up with, announce an immediate large-scale food aid shipment. Let's get several million tons of grain to Egypt right now and avoid starvation.
Because that would put a salve on a lot of the instability, but they probably want the instability to continue so they can jockey around in there and try to get who they want in power.
Exactly. I think the U.S. card is now simply shoot the works for chaos, destabilization, and mob rule, and that's what we've seen. But again, remember, the mob you see in the street is simply an illusion, right? It's a smokescreen, it's a prop. These are the walk-on parts in this drama. The real stuff goes on behind the scenes, and what kinds of threats were delivered to Mubarak, to Suleiman, to this Tantawi, to Enan, the head of the Egyptian military. That I think will be the interesting thing.
Well,
to find
let me
out.
just